I fell into the haunted abyss and uncovered terrifying secrets that should never be revealed. I never should have opened that door. I still shiver at the thought. It was just another Friday night for me, scrolling through videos and munching on popcorn. The rain pounded against the windows like desperate fingers, whispering secrets of the night. I could hear the wind wailing, trying to warn me. But curiosity tugged at me, a familiar itch that had led me into trouble before. The door was cracked open, an invitation wrapped in shadows. The moment I stepped inside, a chill sliced through the air. Darkness enveloped me. The scent of damp earth mixed with something rotten hung thick. As my heart raced, I pushed further into the abyss. I could barely make out the outlines of strange objects in the corner. Dust coated everything, thick enough to taste. Then came the whispers. Soft, echoing voices floated around me. I couldn't make out the words, just the chilling cadence that sent shivers down my spine. I felt like I was intruding on a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. The shadows danced, moving closer with every creak of the floor beneath my feet. My pulse quickened as I stumbled upon objects that looked out of place, a cracked mirror, its surface distorted, reflecting more shadow than light. I shivered. What secrets lay within that glass? I glanced back, hoping to retreat, but something made me stay. Suddenly, a loud crash from behind me made my heart drop. I whirled around, eyes wide, scanning the darkness. The air felt thick, electric with fear. An object had moved. I was sure of it. Hadn't I just seen a chair shift? I wasn't alone anymore. Sweat trickled down my back. Every sound seemed amplified, mocking my stillness. The wind howled outside, but I could hear a new noise: footsteps, slow and deliberate, creeping closer. My breath hitched. I fought the urge to turn and bolt. I could feel the ground pulling me deeper into the void, into whatever horror awaited me. Just then, the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. My heart thundered in my chest as I spun around. There, in the deep shadow, a figure loomed. It was tall, looming like a specter from a nightmare. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze piercing through me, gripping me with icy fingers. That I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. My body froze, refusing to move, my mind screaming for me to escape. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure remained shrouded in darkness, a vast silhouette that seemed to absorb the weak glimmers of light struggling to penetrate the shadows. The air grew colder, and an otherworldly chill seeped into my bones, pulling me deeper into a sense of despair. The whispers crescendoed, forming a choir of mournful lamentation, clawing at my sanity. Each note felt like an accusation, urging me to run, yet something, an invisible force, held me in place. My heart thundered louder as the figure shifted, its form becoming slightly more defined. Deep-set eyes glowed like dying embers, flickering in and out of existence, captivating and horrifying all at once. I could sense something sentient behind those eyes, something that recognized my fear, that reveled in it. Uncertainty washed over me. I questioned if it was human or a manifestation of the darkness itself. I wanted to scream, but the words dissolved in my throat, evaporating into the thick, suffocating silence. Then I noticed the walls. They weren't mere bricks and mortar, they pulsated, as if breathing with a life of their own. Dark tendrils twisted and writhed, creeping along the floor like hungry vines, seeking warmth. My instincts kicked in, practically howling at me to flee, but every muscle in my body felt cemented in place, paralyzed by dread. My eyes darted back to the figure as it stepped closer, shadows melting away like wax under a flame, revealing tattered remnants of what once seemed to be a coat, matted in grime and age. The figure's mouth twisted into a semblance of a smile, stretching too wide, far too wide. It was a grotesque mockery of joy, and for a split second, I felt an overwhelming wave of empathy wash over me. Beneath the terror, I experienced an unwelcome pang of sorrow. This creature, whatever it was, seemed to embody suffering. Hear their screams, it whispered, and I felt its breath, rancid like decay, wash over me. I gasped, fighting the urge to buckle under the weight of its words. Were those the whispers I had heard all along? It lifted a finger, bony and trembling, gesturing toward the mirror that I had so foolishly avoided. The surface rippled, revealing distorted images from my past moments I had wished to forget. The faces of friends and family flickered like candle flames in the wind, contorted in agony. I clutched my head, disoriented, holding back tears. These were memories I had buried, guilt and shame rising like bile in my throat. Join them, the figure beckoned with a ghastly smile. Free yourself, free them. I had no idea if it was taunting me, but the implications clawed at my heart. Did it want to consume me, or was it trying to save me from the torment of living? Suddenly, the darkness around me surged, tendrils snaking closer, wrapping around my ankles, tightening their hold. Panic tore through me. I thrashed, fighting against the unnatural grip, but it only drew me deeper into the murkiness of despair. My breaths became shallow, each inhale laced with fear, and I felt the spectral force of the figure closing in one last desperate push. I turned to flee, but the whispers rose to a deafening roar, drowning out my thoughts. The door was right behind me if only I could reach it. I sprinted, not daring to look back, but with every step, I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching me, claws grazing my back, urging me to stop. Just as my fingers grazed the edge of the door handle, something icy wrapped itself around my wrist, pulling me back with terrifying force. I screamed, a raw, primal sound, but it was swallowed by the shadows, muffled as the air thickened with despair. Stay here, the figure hissed, its voice echoing through my mind. You belong to us now. The door splintered open. In the dizzying chaos of shadows and screams, I was forcefully drawn back into the depths, into the abyss, my vision narrowing, the world spinning until it swallowed me whole. But in that final moment, a fragment of clarity pierced through the darkness, a voice not of the shadows, but of someone I thought lost forever. Help me, and then, everything went black. My consciousness flickered like a faulty light bulb, the edges of reality fraying and stitching back together within the shroud of darkness. I was submerged in an oppressive silence, the kind that seems to swallow sound and hope alike. A heavy weight bore down on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. As I lay still, tethered to this abyss, the remnants of fear coiled around my thoughts like softly suffocating serpents. With effort, I dared to crack open my eyes. In the half-light, I found myself sprawled on cold, damp earth, disoriented but alive. The familiar buzzing of my pulse wove through the air, creating a fragile melody amid the stillness. I pushed myself up on unsteady arms, my surroundings illuminating pieces of the nightmarish puzzle. The walls, now ancient and crumbling, pulsated with a faint, sickly flicker not unlike that of a dying star. I had landed within the confines of a decrepit cavern, dimly lit by luminescent fungi clinging desperately to the stone, casting unsettling shadows on surfaces that seemed to shift and breathe. The whispers returned, barely audible this time, floating through the air like a cruel lullaby and wrapping themselves around my soul. Help me. The voice was clearer now, echoing through the cavern with a familiar timbre that stirred long-dormant memories. Goosebumps prickled my skin. Who had cried out for help? The longer I listened, the more it seeped through the darkness, a plea festering like an open wound. Is anyone there? My own voice came out steadier than I felt, reverberating strangely against the confines of the cavern. Silence enveloped me in response, even the whispers receded, leaving behind only the sound of my frantic breaths. Anxiety etched beneath my skin, and I rose from the ground, compelled to search for the source of that desperate call. As I stumbled deeper into the maw of the cave, the fungi dimmed, replaced by a flickering torchlight in the distance, beckoning me like a siren at sea. Shadows danced grotesquely along the walls, morphing into distorted faces, mouths open in silent screams, eyes filled with unshed tears. Heart racing, I pressed forward, driven by an inexplicable urgency. The tunnel twisted and turned, its path coiling like a serpent, and each step felt weighted, as if the darkness conspired against me. The whispers flared back to life, more insistent now, weaving a tapestry of dissonant voices that struck against my mind like a hammer. Turn back, they cautioned, their tones laced with a chilling certainty. You cannot escape, but my feet carried me forward, drawn irresistibly by the promise of revelation. As the cavern opened into an expansive chamber, I was met with a sight that shocked me into momentary paralysis. The walls were lined with mirrors, dozens of them, reflecting fragments of not just who I was, but of those I had lost. Their faces, though warped by time and pain, glowed as brightly as memories long suppressed. Each reflection told a story of loss, and behind each mirror, a fragile silhouette waded through an ocean of despair. They reached out, fingers grazing the glass as if trying to sever the barrier that held them captive. Help me, the voice came stronger now, a haunting resonance that vibrated through my bones. I stepped closer to one of the mirrors, the air growing cold enough to see my breath as I strained to connect, to touch the outstretched hand of a long-lost loved one. Their features became clearer. It was my brother, the one I had always believed was gone, lost to an accident that shattered my world. His eyes shimmered with raw emotion. Please, you have to get me out. But just then, the figure from before emerged from the shadows, its monstrous form eclipsing the light. The cavern trembled with its presence, the whispers crescendoing into a cacophony of despair. Foolish child, it snarled, clawed fingers curling around a mirror's edge. They're not who you think they are. They never were. My heart plummeted as reality fractured, and in that moment, I recognized the truth. Behind each reflection lay not salvation, but a harbinger of suffering, waiting to drag me into an eternal cycle of sorrow. The weight of my choices bore down, threatening to crush me beneath its monumental pressure. Join us, the voice of my brother echoed, firm yet tragically comforting. Before it's too late, with the figure lurking behind, filling the space with dread, I realized I had only moments left to decide. I couldn't look away from my brother's pleading eyes, nor could I ignore the grotesque figure preparing to engulf me. What awaited me, salvation or damnation? The door of fate swung open, inviting despair into my heart, but the figure loomed closer, a malicious grin distorting its face, leaving me frozen between two worlds. Suddenly, the mirrors shattered not just the glass, but the very fabric of time and reality. Make your choice. It roared, teeth sharp as blades. As the darkness surged forward, I lunged for the one chance I had left, not knowing if it would lead to the light or plunge me even deeper into the abyss. But as I grasped for the remnants of hope, the ground opened beneath me, spiraling downward into an unending void, and then, everything went black again. The sensation of falling enveloped me, like being wrapped in a shroud of dense, impenetrable darkness. It sunk deeper into my bones, numbing my senses. Just as despair began to wrap around my mind, I landed with a thud, jolted awake from my plummet into an unknown realm. The shock of landing washed over me, followed by the sickening realization that I had crashed into yet another cavern, but one far more sinister than the last. That I lay on the ground, immobilized by the strange, gelatinous substance oozing beneath me. The air hummed with an electric tension, crackling like static electricity. I quickly assessed my surroundings, heart racing. Light flickered like dying fireflies, illuminating grotesque shapes that writhed against the walls, almost as if the darkness itself was alive. Tendrils of mist slithered through the air, heavy and resinous, coiling around my limbs and drawing me deeper into terror. The whispers returned. This time, they were sharper, more desperate, an amalgamation of countless voices colliding into a maelstrom of anguish. Leave. Leave while you can. They cried, an urgent warning that reverberated through the cavern's belly. Yet, there was also an underlying current of something darker, a hypnotic call that promised clarity amid the chaos. As I forced myself to stand, I caught sight of something glimmering in the cavern's limited light, a small object half submerged in the viscous ground. Cautious, I approached, my feet slick on the wet surface. Fragments from the last chamber raced in my mind, the memories of my brother beckoning me, tangled with the grotesque smirk of the figure. The object revealed itself to be an intricately carved amulet, cold in my palm and exuding an aura of deep sorrow. Depicted on its surface was a twisted tree, roots sprawling wide like fingers grasping at the earth, and a solitary tear shaped like a drop of blood hung from one of its branches. My pulse quickened as I recognized the tree. It was a symbol from my childhood, one I'd seen in my family's home, drawn by the hands of my brother. "Find it," a voice echoed from the darkness, raspy yet undeniably clear, "and the truth shall rise again." Every instinct yelled to run, to escape the predatory nature of the cavern, but the amulet held me captive. Mustering the last shards of resolve, I clutched it tightly, feeling the pulse of energy intensify within my grasp. As if in response, the cavern groaned and shuddered around me, the walls vibrating with sinister decree. Suddenly, the shadows flickered and twisted, coalescing into an indistinct shape, something clawing its way into existence. A figure emerged, though not inconspicuously. It was the same entity that had haunted my thoughts, twisted, tortured, with eyes like endless voids. "You dare defy me?" it hissed, the voice echoing against ancient stone. Desperation surged through me. "I'm not afraid of you." My voice cracked, but I anchored my resolve in spite of the dread creeping up my spine. With a snarl, it lunged closer, flowing through the air like ink in water, dark tendrils trailing violently behind. Memories flooded through me once again, the warmth of my brother's laughter, the gentle admonitions of our childhood, fragments that reminded me of who I'd once been, before this abyss consumed us both. "Your past will be your end," the figure threatened, voice weaving around my mind, invasive and heavy. "All bonds come to a conclusion. You cannot mend what is already broken." But in that dreadful moment, the amulet pulsed with an unfamiliar warmth. Images cascaded behind my eyelids. My brother, once painted in misery, shone brightly, his name echoing in my veins. With conviction burning like the last sun of day, I shouted, "I will not abandon him." The figure recoiled momentarily, as if my words struck at something deeper. Sensing weakness, I thrust the amulet forward, a desperate conduit of hope against the tides of despair crashing around me. The light within the amulet intensified, illuminating the cavern with an ethereal glow, illuminating twisted forms locked in an eternal torment. Then, in a blinding flash, I was transported to a different instance, a room, soaked in memories where the sound of laughter reverberated against the walls. A small boy sat at a table, excitedly flipping through pages of a family photo album, pointing with glee to the faces of the departed. But as I reached out to brush his hair from his eyes, the air turned frigid, and the shadows enveloped the room, stealing the warmth. "Stay with me," the boy begged, eyes wide and pleading, but the shadows lunged, ravenous for the light, and as they swarmed over him, the boy dissolved into the darkness. "No!" I screamed, but the echo swallowed my cry. The figure flickered at the edge of my vision, its mouth twisting into an unsettling smile as my heart shattered anew. "Embrace your fate," it whispered, the cavern quaking with its monstrous laughter. With my brother's distant voice joining the cacophony of anguished wails surrounding me, I turned in desperation, clutching the amulet against my chest as the chamber began to spiral. I had fallen into the depths of a sinister realm where not even the fleeting hope of light could pierce through. And just as I braced myself for the inevitable, the ground trembled violently beneath my feet. The ancient stone walls split and ruptured, revealing an even darker abyss that beckoned with a sinister lure, swallowing every shred of sanity as I was dragged into the depths. "Join us," echoed the hollow voices, striking through the remnants of my resolve. What awaited me beyond that chasm? I could only tremble in the dark, teetering on the precipice of despair, with the weight of my choices tightening around my throat. And as I fell into that gaping maw, the shadows reached out, claws of malevolence ready to claim me for their own. In the last moment of clarity, I saw another reflection in the darkness, my own, staring back with eyes that were not my own. I realized then, far too late, that the end was merely the beginning of a horror far more profound than I could ever fathom. The air churned with an acrid stench as I plummeted into the gulf of shadows, each second stretching into an eternity. Time lost all meaning, and the world promised by the flickering fragments of light became an inescapable nightmare. I landed hard, not on stone as I had expected, but on an uneven surface that shifted beneath me, alive with writhing filaments, as if the ground itself were a mass of serpents. I gasped, instinctively rolling away, and the chaotic sounds evolved into a symphony of wails, each voice a tortured echo of the past. "Help us," they pleaded, a horrendous chorus that clawed at the edges of my sanity. I struggled to my feet, heart hammering, and as I caught my breath, I realized the shadows were moving closer once again, swirling with an intent that sent terror coursing through my limbs. Just beyond where I had fallen, an incessant flicker caught my eye, a luminous trail leading to an archway crudely carved into the cavern wall. It pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing me nearer with an insatiable pull. But the whispers intensified around me, a chorus of frantic warnings: "Do not go there. It will consume you," yet, the promise of the light beckoned still. I approached cautiously, the gelatinous ground beneath squelching underfoot. It seemed to pulse like a living thing, as if it knew my intentions, and the biting chill in the air wrapped itself tighter around me, urging me to turn back. With an impulsive breath, I stepped through the archway, the light swallowing me whole. My heart sank as I was thrust into a vast chamber, far grander than the meager cavern I had initially thought myself imprisoned in. Ancient stone pillars loomed like silent sentinels, the air brimming with a suffocating power that made every breath burn. At the center, a massive altar rose like a monument to despair, covered in intricate carvings depicting a tale of grief and sorrow that sent icy fingers crawling up my spine. Beneath the altar lay a deep void, an endless crack in reality that seemed to yawn with anticipation, its edges lined with what appeared to be the remnants of soul specters trapped endlessly, faces twisted in torment. They reached out, their gaunt hands brushing my skin, leaving trails of freezing despair that ignited primal dread. I stumbled backward, horrified, my eyes caught by a reflection in the altar's polished surface. My figure stared back, but it was not just me. A fleeting image of my brother flickered beside me, ethereal and pale, his eyes filled with an agony that resonated in my heart. "Help me," he mouthed silently, a plea that reverberated through the chamber, resonating with the ghostly chorus of the damned. The shadows that had been stalking me coiled tighter, agitated. "Join us," they hissed, "be one with the lost." Panic flared, and I felt the inexorable pull towards the void at the altar's base. My feet began to drag, as if the ground conspired against my escape. "No!" I screamed, clenching the amulet tighter, its surface pulsating more fiercely now. I clutched it like a lifeline, desperately willing it to fight back against the encroaching darkness. "Reveal the truth," I demanded, but nothing stirred. The sinister whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, celebrating the despair that clung to the air. In that moment of desperation, the altar erupted with energy, the carvings seizing into motion, unveiling the story of a family torn apart, a sacrifice made to appease a timeless evil. Shapes formed, a father turning his back, a mother weeping, and a brother lost in the shadows. Their faces twisted into anguish that sent shivers spiraling through me. "It cannot be true," I gasped, recoiling as the realization hit me like a physical blow. Betrayed, the echoes entwined my thoughts, wrapping around my mind and squeezing tightly. A shattered past spun before me, moments I could scarcely recognize against the weight of the horror enveloping me. My brother didn't just vanish, he had been sacrificed, an offering to darkness that sought solace through suffering. Suddenly, the images merged into one hideous figure that rose from the altar, draped in shadows that whirled like smoke around a malevolent core. Eyes burned with the fires of retribution, locking onto mine with a gleaming hunger. "You will pay for the sins of your family," it growled, voice a guttural rumble that reverberated through my bones. The pull of the void grew stronger, tendrils of darkness reaching out for my soul. "Help me!" My brother's voice wailed, asylum submerged in torment, an imploration that twisted my heart even further. I fought back against the pull, yearning for his light. "Enough!" I screamed, swinging the amulet above my head, channeling every ounce of my will. "You've taken too much. You will not take me." The glow surged vehemently as I thrust it forward, and for a fleeting moment, the shadows recoiled, shrieks mingling with violent fury. Yet, the void surged, yawning wider as darkness clawed back, erupting with furious winds that smothered the light. Gritting my teeth, I plunged into the chaos, heart racing, feeling the insurmountable abyss threatening to swallow me once and for all. And just as I teetered on the edge of annihilation, the world fell silent, the shadows drew back, and in the sudden calm, I heard a whisper, twisted and cruel, "You've only just begun to uncover the truth and it will be your undoing." Then everything shattered, plunging me into an unknown that felt all too familiar, leaving me gasping for clarity within the unforgiving grasp of the darkness. The silence shattered like fragile glass, and as fragments rained down upon me, I felt a disorienting shift in the very fabric of reality. The ground beneath my feet buckled, and the familiar warmth of hope disintegrated into ice-cold dread. Shadows twisted with life, pulsating and swaying as if celebrating the resurgence of torment. Confusion wrapped around me, a cocoon of fear that kept me ensnared. That I stumbled, driven backward by the relentless pressure building in the air, which now hummed with malicious energy. The air thickened, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe, as if 1,000 hands were grasping me, urging my submission to the dark force that awaited oblivion. The altar loomed ahead, a grotesque monument to despair. From its base, the void rippled and churned, now alive with erratic flickers of light. Screams and shouts echoed in sickening harmony, a cacophony of anguish that clawed at my sanity. Here, the past mingled with the present in ways I could barely grasp. Each flicker offered tiny revelations of those who had come before me, each vision revealing not just their screams, but narratives laced with betrayal and sorrow. Among the swirling chaos, I caught sight of a figure writhing in despair's grip. "Help me!" It cried out, not my brother, but someone else, a child, eyes wide with terror, lifeless and pale. "They made me do it. I didn't want top lease." The child vanished into the expanse of suffering before I could reach out, and a cold urgency surged within me. Was this another sacrifice, another victim? Then the void broke forth into insanity, and with it, shadows flared, snaking outward, congealing into twisted forms. I was being watched by things that could not exist in our plane. They slipped through the cracks of reality like a sickening miasma, mouths opening wide, revealing gaping nothingness as they feasted on my fear. Each shriek sent tendrils of panic spiraling deeper into my core. "Your blood holds the key," a voice hissed from the tendrils, echoing as a whisper through my mind. It was both soothing and sinister, each word curling around me like a snake. It pulsed with vile promises that burrowed beneath my skin and burbled up, with sickening familiarity, to the surface of my thoughts. My blood? The blood of a family betrayed, willing to claim the next generation as payment. In that moment, the ground beneath me felt like quicksand as I willed myself toward the distant archway behind me. I had to escape, I had to find a way back. Each step was a heavy surrender to the shadows tugging at my very spirit. With my heart pounding furiously, I propelled myself forward, flinging myself toward the archway, the illusions of possibility swirling within me, each pulse of the light growing dimmer with every step I took. But before I could reach my sanctuary, the shadows erupted, clawing their way into reality, forming grotesque faces that leered hungrily at me. They began to delve into my memories, scrambling through my past like rats in a kitchen, seeking out my deepest fears. I felt them plunge into the recesses of my mind, tearing through to the truth, the moments I wished to forget, buried deliberate within the grave of recollection. "Come play with us," a chorus of distorted, childlike voices taunted, each syllable echoing into the cavern. "Remember us?" We were waiting. Visions flooded my senses. I saw my brother, his laughter ringing clear and pure, before it expanded into horrific echoes of the scene when our lives shattered the day he vanished. My parents' faces twisted in horror, tears streaming down as they pointed their fingers at each other. My heart shattered again at the implications. How could I have forgotten? The laughter turned to cries, screams forever etched into the walls of my mind. Bracing myself against the portal of the archway, I found my footing for a split second before something sharp punctured through the swarming darkness. Tendrils lashed out, becoming razor-sharp blades wrapping around my legs, pulling me back. Thrashing, I was mortified as an arm reached from the shadows, its fingers clawing toward me, seeking an anchor with desperation. Screams erupted around me, morphing into blurred faces, twisting into anguished visages that reflected my own horror. Among them, I saw the child once more, the one I could not save. "You cannot leave, not yet," it cried, voice dying away as its essence flickered before collapsing into the abyss. "They know you, they know what you will become." The shadows seized me, a vice grip that could crush stone, and I felt myself being dragged into the void, where every wound festered, every soul cried in chaos. Panic tore through me as I sensed reality slipping away, my brother's haunting figure lingering just out of reach. In a desperate bid to break free, I grasped the amulet hanging around my neck, a final reminder of hope, and screamed, "Help me! I will not be a pawn in your cruel game." But as the darkness swallowed my voice, the chamber responded differently. The altar trembled violently, light bursting forth in chaotic patterns, blinding, imploding until it all erupted into a vortex that surrounded me. The faces of those I thought I was saving streamed past me, each imprinted with despair, as the child's voice echoed once more. "Everything is connected. The truth ties us all together." Suddenly, the light collapsed, and I was thrown into a different dimension of darkness, where echoes of life became suffocated screams. I landed with a violent thud on a floor I could not see, the oppressive grip of hopelessness clawing at my throat. In this void, a voice spoke directly to me, slick and wet like the shadows themselves. "You will choose sacrifice or sacrifice. You cannot escape your fate." And just as the truth spiraled within me, like a serpent ready to strike, everything went dark, leaving me hovering on the precipice of an unfathomable horror, a whisper lingering on my skin that questioned my very existence. A sensation of weightlessness enveloped me as I drifted in this new dimension, an abyss where my thoughts echoed back at me, distorted and twisted. Fragments of fears and regrets danced around in the darkness, not just my own, but those of 1,000 souls, shackled to this torment. My senses were overwhelmed, clawing desperately at phantom memories that filled the blackness like starlight in a night sky. The voice persisted, serpentine, hissing through the void. "You think you can resist? We are everywhere, we are you." Each syllable reverberated, clawing at the very essence of my being. Suddenly, a harsh light flickered in the distance, illuminating a path ahead. I staggered toward it, my feet dragging through an unseen mire. It was a dim glimmer of hope, laden with something sinister. I stepped forward, and the ground pulsed beneath me, morphing into a grotesque patchwork of faces twisted in agony. Each step echoed with the cries of the damned, voices layering over one another in a cacophony of sorrow. My breath hitched as the illumination further revealed a ghastly mural on the walls around me. Images of children, old and new, flickered like a slide show gone awry, their expressions shifting between joy and horror. What were they? Were they the sacrifices? My heart raced as the realization washed over me. These were the children who had been taken, like my brother, turned into whispers of memory. I fought against the gripping despair that threatened to pull me under again. With every heartbeat, I felt the cold grip of dread tighten around my throat. Glistening sweat slicked my skin as I pressed onwards, drawn toward the light, even as the shadows hissed and tangled in my limbs, a chorus of futility urging me to turn back. "You cannot change it, plaything," they sang, their tone mocking. "You are part of the tapestry." Suddenly, the ground beneath me shuddered violently, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman clad in tattered garments, her features impossibly familiar yet horrifyingly wrong. "You came here for answers," she said, voice brittle yet hauntingly melodic. "But truth is a heavier burden than you know. Who are you?" I gasped, instinctively recoiling as she extended an icy hand toward me. The shadows writhed around her fingertips like serpents, quicksilver emotions flickering through her hollow eyes. "Do you not remember?" she whispered, her voice blending with the shadows. "I am your mother, and I am forgotten." In that instant, the abyss cracked open as waves of déjà vu crashed over memories masquerading as dreams. Memories of being swept into the arms of a woman whose shadows I now knew were just as alive as her flesh. Yet anger and sorrow contorted her image, transforming it into something both achingly beautiful and grotesquely terrifying. "No. You died." I cried out, my voice breaking as I struggled to comprehend the impossibility before me. "You left us," her laughter twinkled through the darkness like shattered glass, the sound stabbing at my ears. "You think so? It's a prison, child. A prison built from grief. I was not lost, I was chosen, like all of them." Tears streamed down my face as I watched the figures of children, twisted and tormented, emerge from behind her, pale hands reaching out toward me with pleading expressions, images warped around me, different fates played out like a loop, my brother standing at the edge of the void, arms stretched toward me, my parents, consumed by guilt, fingers curling into fists, shadows clinging to our family like a shroud. Each heartbeat rang out blaringly through the abyss, and I clutched my head, desperate to silence the tumult. "What do you want from me?" I shrieked, my plea echoing against the pinprick of light that fought to hold sway. "Why are you showing me this? I can't bear it." "Make a choice," the woman commanded, her voice ominous and soft, wrapping around me. "You must face your fears. You must see what happened, and what will happen if you do not." Before I could process her words, the faces of the children twisted, merging with the shadows racing toward me. They surged forward. A tidal wave of despair. The air crackled with energy, the darkness creeping closer, insinuating itself into my very soul, leaving me trapped in their collective anguish. I stumbled back, the memories choosing me, flooding my mind with unthinkable truths that I started, but the shadows surged, pulling me down, deeper into their sorrow. I felt the phantom touch of clammy hands against my arms, dragging me toward a swirling mass of chaos at the center of the abyss. "You cannot escape your fate. Your blood binds you to us." They shrieked, the wailing rising to a fever pitch that rattled my bones. And then, upwards from the endless depths, I heard a familiar voice, a whisper slipping through the thick darkness. "Find me." I squinted into the shadows, the voice pulling on strings of memory from another life to me, a forgotten promise. My heart raced as the abyss surged, the tendrils of pain tightening until I thought I might snap. But amid the overwhelming dread, a flicker of resolve blossomed. I would not be consumed. I would not let my brother's fate intertwine with my own. With every ounce of energy, I screamed against the cacophony around me, "I will find you. I won't let you go." And just as hope and despair collided, reality shattered around me, leaving nothing but the swirling chaos of shadows entwined with embers of light. But as the screams faded into a haunting silence, a dark presence loomed behind me, whispering promises in a voice that echoed like my own. "You're too late, child." They never really leave. The shadows started to close in, and all I could think was that I had sealed my fate, and a far more sinister revelation loomed just beyond my reach. It was as if I had plummeted into a chasm where time and space had dissolved into unrecognizable chaos. The shadows writhed about me, coiling tightly around my limbs as if intending to draw me back into their endless void. The dark presence I had sensed behind me pulsed with the weight of countless memories, each one a chilling testament of lives lost and broken promises. "Find me," the whisper crawled through my mind, colder than the chill wrapping around my body, tugging me with an urgency I had not entirely comprehended. I could feel the very atoms of despair drawing me closer to the heart of the darkness, the place from which the echo had sprung. As I fought against the suffocating mist, a vision blazed in my mind, the sepulchral face of a child, eyes wide and pleading, framed by the tendrils of shadows that seemed to beckon me. "Who are you?" I shouted into the void, but only the chilling laugh of the woman-me mother returned to me, mingling grotesquely with the mourning cries of what felt like 1,000 souls. And then, a flicker of light pierced through the murk, startling me. It pulsed and flared like a heartbeat, drawing my attention away from the tightening grip of the shadows. I rushed towards it, propelled by the desperate need to understand the truth that lay veiled before me. As I approached, the twisted landscape shifted ominously. The tapestry of suffering and despair began to weave itself into something tangible, and my heart sank. The flickering light settled into images, snapshots of a life I no longer recognized. Each frame revealed a moment, a birth, laughter, heartbreak, and loss. "Timmy." A voice sliced through the air, electrifying my senses. It was small and vibrant, echoing with innocence and a joy so pure it made my chest ache. Timmy! I gasped, sensing an urgency that burned brightly above the blackened ashes of my despair. Is that you? But the light dimmed under the weight of something malicious lurking nearby. The shadows roared, and a sharp gust of air whipped past, snatching the warmth from my skin and filling me instead with a sickening chill. The flickering images began to warp, the joyous scenes now twisted into grotesque parodies, laughter devolved into howls, faces of happiness turning into masks of terror. No, no! I cried, falling to my knees as the darkness swirled violently, surrounding me with visions of torment. I clawed at the grass, the moist earth beneath my fingers unearthed memories, struggling to lift myself from this pit of despair. Then, from the periphery of my vision, I saw silhouettes shift behind the veil of despair. They shimmered momentarily with that hauntingly familiar light, and a figure stepped forward, framed by the shadows consuming it. Timmy! I cried again, my voice breaking as hope flickered in the depths of my heart. Is it really you? He approached cautiously, the edges of his form barely discernible through the nothingness that threatened to swallow us both. Sister, he whispered, the sound almost garbled, drowned beneath the convulsing shadows. But his eyes, they held magic, still a flicker of love that steadied my racing heartbeat for the briefest moment. But then the darkness howled, angry at being overlooked, and the very ground beneath us shook. A host of faces leered from the shadows, familiar yet contorted with anguish, mouths gaping in silent screams. I felt my breath hitch. They clawed at my essence, a desperate plea woven through their shared suffering. Save us! They cried, their voices echoing like the tolling of a funeral bell. End the suffering! No! Timmy shouted, fear striking him like a bolt of lightning. You can't listen to them. They're lying. But the shadows thrashed violently, pulling at my limbs and enveloping Timmy in a confounding darkness. I could see him slipping further away, his form dissolving into the chaos that surrounded us. Panic surged as I reached out for him, but my arms were ensnared by shadows that crept up like a vice and pried me apart. Join us! A multitude of voices chanted, both enticing and menacing, a hideous harmony of forgotten souls. Echoing with need.no. I screamed, fighting against the oppressive force binding me. As I flailed, the world around me surged, blurring into fragments until one solitary vision flashed into focus: our family, huddled together, their faces contorted in anguish, casting accusing eyes my way, pleading for my return. The shimmering image moved like liquid light, descending deeper into the abyss, and I felt the overwhelming urge to follow it. Racing against time, I turned to Timmy, who was fading fast, almost completely invisible against the tide of shadows. Don't go! I yelled, desperation raking my throat. I felt the fabric of reality begin to tear, thin strands of light and dark at war, the light that represented hope, and the darkness that reveled in despair. Find me! His voice floated back one last time as the shadows howled, a roar of 1,000 voices merging into one. The abyss writhed in pain and anger, grasping desperately at my being, dragging me back into the depths. Just before I vanished, I glimpsed the final fragment of his face, twisted in agony, swallowed by the thrumming pitch of despair, a single tear making its way down his cheek. And then, as the blackness surged to claim me, the female figure materialized once more, her eyes alight with a painful truth. You're too late. They have chosen to take your child instead. A deafening silence fell like a shroud as I felt the ground beneath me disappear completely, plunging into an unfathomable void where whispering secrets wrapped around me tighter than chains, never to be severed again. I plunged deeper, tumbling through an inky blackness that felt as if it were alive. The air around me thickened, constricting my lungs and twisting my thoughts into a chaotic frenzy. Where was Timmy? The echoes of his name reverberated in my mind, racing along the jagged edges of my consciousness, a desperate plea I clung to amidst the despair. The cold hollowness beneath me swirled like a monster, gnashing its teeth, waiting to devour whatever light remained. I felt it before I saw it, a tremor in the fabric of the void, an awareness creeping along my skin like a finger tracing my spine. A soft sigh, imbued with sadness, seeped through the shadow-laden air. I turned, instinctively, and saw shadows coalescing into grotesque shapes, twisted figures that seemed stitched together from sorrow and dread. The edges of their forms flickered like dying flames, giving form to the inhabitants of this abyss. "Welcome," they whispered, voice dripping like poison. "Welcome to our home." I recoiled, staggering back into the darkness, heart pounding violently as their blurs surged toward me, hunger and despair radiating from their vague but palpable presence. Faces morphed into grotesque visages that seemed to revel in their misfortunes, a kaleidoscope of distorted lives lost, their misery spilling over like an angry tide. "Please," I cried, my voice ringing hollow against the monument of sorrow surrounding me. "I need to find my brother, your brother." A figure stepped out, ethereal and reluctant, shimmering with an inexplicable light that fought against the darkness. It was a girl, her hair a cloud of silvery threads, eyes reflecting echoes of the last light I had glimpsed. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, her voice a soft lament, but a shroud of hopelessness loomed behind her, ready to swallow whatever reprieve she might bring. "Why not?" I demanded, desperation lending strength to my voice. "I have to save him. Timmy is lost to us," she said, shaking her head solemnly. "Once you descend into the abyss, so too do you become one of its lost. The shadows covet all hope and devour everything that stands in their way." The shadows darker than a starless night began to surge, undulating with palpable hunger. A cacophony of whispers began to rise, a suffocating tide that pressed down upon me, swirling with accusations, regret, and guilt. "What have you done? Save us!" called out the multitude, their hollow voices sharp as blades, each word piercing like a vengeful wisp. "Bring him back!" I screamed, fury igniting my insides, yet fear curled like a noose around my throat. The girl's image began to flicker, her form wavering in the spill of darkness. "Fight it! If you want to find your brother, you must navigate the labyrinth that lies ahead." She extended her hand, glowing faintly against the encroaching shadows. I lunged forward to grasp her hand, but as our fingers brushed, the shadows roared, reverberating through the abyss, their fury erupting in a clash of anguished cries. The girl gasped, rippling like water, dissolving into a swarm of shimmering particles. My heart sank. With her gone, hope felt like a flickering candle, barely illuminating the vastness of despair surrounding me. The shadows converged, intertwining, hungry and relentless, renewing their assault to drag me further into the abyss. I flailed against them, grasping for anything solid. And then, just as despair threatened to seal my fate, a soft, joyous laughter trembled across the void. "Search for me, sister." Timmy's voice, so clear amidst the chaos, echoed like an angel's call. I felt those tendrils of light beckoning me, resonating with life. Hastily, I turned my body toward the sound, threading through the shadows as they writhed like vipers attempting to ensnare me. The laughter became a beacon, anchoring my resolve even as darkness clawed at my ankles, a malignant creature hungry for my surrender. "Hold on, Timmy. I will find you," I howled, battling through that smothering despair while tears streamed down my cheeks, mingling with fear and determination. Finally, I stumbled into an opening, an unstable doorway glowing with luminescence, forming a path ahead. But just as I crossed the threshold, an unnerving silence enveloped me, blanketing every sound until all I could hear was the deafening thrum of my heartbeat. And then I stopped, horror creeping back in waves as I beheld what lay on the other side, a realm suspended in a grotesque tableau of twisted lives, echoes of tormented families frozen in fright. Faces contorted in anguish loomed over me, eyes wide with terror, their mouths agape in silent screams, words I would never understand clawing at the edges of my mind. My breath hitched, and as I stepped forward, a sudden chill rushed through my veins. A dark, familiar presence coiled around my heart like a noose, and in the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker, a shadow darting just beyond my reach, a shape riddled with despair but resonating with an indelible familiarity. A whisper, soft but insistent, curled around my thoughts as the figures around me shifted and swayed ominously. "You have returned, but are you ready for what you will find?" Turning my head slowly, I found myself staring into the eyes of something that made my soul freeze, a reflection of my own face, twisted with loss and longing, surrounded by spectral figures, all staring back, questioning, longing. Then came the scream, piercing and raw, echoing through the fragility of reality as the shadow lunged, and I realized with sickening clarity my own reflection was smiling in that wretched tableau, lips curling in a cruel, mocking grin, and in that instant, a shard of understanding pierced through the fog. What I sought to find may not be what I truly wanted at all. With trembling hands and a heart racing against the weight of despair, I poised myself before the reflect I own, a visage I knew so well yet couldn't recognize, caught in the grips of a truth that chilled me to the bone. The shadow lurked behind, pulsating with malevolence, blurring the lines between my reality and the abyss around me. "Welcome back," it taunted, its voice a haunting echo that vibrated in the marrow of my bones. "That I am not here for you," I shouted, the remnants of hope struggling to find purchase amidst the suffocating dread. "I'm here to find my brother." But the shadow only smiled, a chilling, wicked grin that seemed to peel back the layers of time itself, revealing the festering truths beneath. "And what if the one you're searching for wasn't lost at all? What if he chose to stay?" The words hung heavy in the air, taunting me with possibilities I was too afraid to entertain. My breath hitched as realization crashed over me. The memories I had fought to piece together, the laughter, the warmth, could just as easily belong to a darkness I couldn't fathom. "No, he wouldn't. Timmy would never," the shadow interrupted, its voice turning to gravel as it leaned closer, a vortex of agony swirling within its depths. "He was part of them, just as you are now." Images flashed before my eyes. I saw my brother standing at that cliff's edge, not as a victim, but as a willing sacrifice, cloaked in anguish yet enveloped in a sense of tranquility. Moments that should have been ours faded, replaced with memories of darker pursuits, the price of which was too steep for the innocent. The truth began to unspool, dark threads weaving through my mind. A family, too burdened by pain to confront its demons, ultimately chose to bind themselves to an ancient curse, one that fed on sacrifice and desperation. "Timmy, he was the price to pay, wasn't he?" I whispered, realization spiraling into horror. The shadows danced excitedly, their whispers a maddening cacophony urging me to succumb. "He didn't just disappear, he was taken." A deep, rumbling laugh erupted from the shadow, a blend of mockery and sorrow. "You see now. This abyss has fed on your grief. Each choice, each sacrifice, all leading back to this moment, this dark reckoning," it sneered, the darkness trembling, swirling around me, grasping for my very essence. "Join us. Become one with your brother. The depths of despair are rich, and your pain only serves to strengthen our hold." As anguish wrapped its tendrils around me, I could see how the abyss had grown, a reflection of the torment within myself, a cycle unbroken, a legacy of sorrow handed down. The figures around me twitched and shrieked, their faces shifting to those of lost loved ones, family and friends long mourned, all whispering the same haunting refrain, "You cannot escape, you belong to the shadows now, no." I screamed at them, a raw flame fueled by defiance. But even in my resolve, the truth of their echoes struck hard, making me falter. I didn't know. But the weight of my choice bore down, and within the depths of those poking whispers lay an undeniable conclusion: I would have to make a sacrifice. It was always destined for me, just as it had been for my family. My brother had only paved the way for me, leaving behind the legacy of suffering to envelop my spirit. "No," I gasped, the vision of Timmy smirking back at me through the wall of shadows, admixture of horror and longing. "You must choose, child," the shadow spat impatiently. "Will it be you that falls into the void, or shall you free him?" And at that moment, within the swirling chaos of love and despair, I understood the abyss did not desire a sacrifice, it thrived on the pain of a broken heart. My love for Timmy, tangled in the threads of grief, fueled the shadows. But what if that same love could serve as a weapon against the darkness? With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I thrust my palm against the altar, desperate for clarity, for the resolve to fight. "I refuse to be a part of this cycle. I will not let you take me." The void recoiled, shadowy tendrils snapping back as the words took form, reverberating against the walls of torment. When the echoes of anguish collided within themselves, the darkness erupted into a fury, the abyss trembling with rage. The faces of the damned twisted, knotted with fear as their chains rattled furiously, but the specter of my brother remained static, eyes locked onto mine, pleading with a deep-seated longing, but something shifted. A fracture in the chaos created sparks of light, memories of Timmy, pure and untainted. I reached deeper into the murk, grasping for that fleeting illumination, for the joy buried beneath. "I will find you, brother," I cried out vehemently, channeling my spirit into the words that resonated deeper than mere desperation, overflowing with the love that endured even amidst this abyss. No darkness can claim what we share. In that moment of clarity, the stark luminosity glimmered alive, engulfing the space around me. The shadows shrieked an anguished howl as the light expanded, pushing back against the abyss, scattering the echoes. And then, just as the rift in darkness began to consume itself, a sickening gasp filled the air. It echoed of 1,000 lives connected by sorrow, colliding forcefully until everything collapsed into oblivion. A final whisper, twisted and low, resonated from the shadows, "You may have escaped us, but you will never be free." Choking on the blackness, I halted in the center of a new reality. Emptiness stretched out endlessly before me. And just as the realization of freedom seeped in, I turned to see my reflection once more, not alone this time but accompanied by my brother, mirroring back at me with a muted smile that reverberated of joy yet laced with pain. "As long as we bear this burden together, I am never truly lost," he murmured, eyes shimmering like shards of glass. And there I stood, heart straining against the encroaching light, aware that the abyss lingered just beyond the threshold. The shadows, now 100 fearful whispers, remained tucked away in the corners of my mind, a constant reminder that while I may have triumphed for now, the cycle would continue to loom, always waiting for another soul willing to pay the price. Yet beneath that dread, I felt the pulse of enduring hope, a promise solidifying in the depths of my being. But as I turned to leave, eyes lingering on Timmy's reflection, a final truth sliced through me, resonating like the toll of a funeral bell. "Remember, even the light can cast the darkest of shadows."